I've been perusing just social media and just seeing there's a lot of ticked off Georgia fans with the drop that they saw. Now, you would obviously think, Palmer, you would think if you win this week, it doesn't matter. Like if you win, you're right back in the mix. But does this set a precedent for something that the committee might do to maybe push out that fourth or fifth extra SEC team? Like, what is your takeaway from where Georgia sits and then the rest of the field?
Well, there's two things that I take away from it. One, I think that Georgia, if it does win, I do agree with you that if Georgia wins on Saturday against Tennessee and obviously handles business against UMass and almighty Georgia Tech, I knew you would like that one, Bryce. If they take care of business the rest of the way, Georgia will be in the playoff. Now, I think Georgia could be going on the road for the playoff. And I think that is surprising to some Georgia fans that we're talking about a team that would have wins over Texas and Clemson and Tennessee, would have played the number one strength of schedule and would be forced to go on the road because of two road losses to Alabama and Ole Miss, two teams very likely to be in the playoffs. So I think that is one takeaway that I had from last night. Two would be, I do think there's a dangerous precedent that's being set here of, let's preface this. This is the second playoff rankings. These don't really matter. They very well could be doing this just to drive some TV ratings for ESPN. Mm-hmm. But if these are true rankings and that's how they very much view this, to me, I don't love the fact that we are very much looking at a ranking that says, hey, here's your undefeated and one-loss teams. Let's rank them accordingly, and then we'll get to the two-loss teams. Because in a world where the SEC and the Big Ten and all those teams, but all those conferences, but especially the SEC, where those conferences have gotten to this point where they cannot have everybody playing everybody. And there's going to be unbalanced schedules, and there's going to be, there is this drive to create made-for-TV matchups. Yeah. When you do that and you put a team like Georgia in as many tough games as they did, playing 4 college football playoff potential teams, 5 if you want to throw Clemson in, but that's by Georgia's own doing. But playing that many teams that are that good, you're begging these conferences to say, okay, fine, we're not going to do this anymore. Because if what matters is, if all that matters is the number of losses that you have, there's no point in teams going out and scheduling non-conference games, but also playing, a tough conference slate. And so it is a tough precedent to set, and I do think that it could set up for an SEC team surprisingly being left out of the field, or in favor of a Big Ten team. Let's just call them Penn State, that hasn't beaten anybody, that has, just because they have one loss, or let's call an independent Notre Dame that has one loss because they've beaten just Texas A&M, and really haven't played anyone else. To me, I think
Oh God, Will.
The disrespect.
The disrespect to Navy.
To me, I just think that we need to be looking at more than the one loss. I think there's got to be a deeper dive into this than just how many wins do you have, how many losses do you have. If you've got one or none, you're in.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think that I was talking with someone about this today. I think we're entering a time of where you really are going to figure out, and the committee has to figure this out. Are you going with the most deserving, or are you being realistic about who would actually beat who? Y'all's guy, J.D. Pickell, kind of went viral for talking about, the fact that BYU wouldn't be favored over like the top 6 or 7 SEC teams on a neutral site. And I won't even say I disagree with that. I think that is very true. I mean, I think it is true to a certain extent. But
I think you got to be careful too, like moving forward, trying to be hypothetical like that.
Oh, very true. Yeah.
Basing on who would beat who. Just say who you think is better. Like watching the teams play. Like, to me, I think, I said this Monday when we previewed it. I don't know that the committee watches games the way that they rank these teams. It's almost like they don't even watch.
Yeah. The fact that South Carolina just entered the rankings is wild to me. They're one of the hottest teams in
And
college.
Tulane.
Tulane. The fact that Missouri's ranked. I mean, and Eli Drinkwitz goes on national television talking with Cole Kublik about they still got a chance, and I want what he's drinking up there in Columbia, so it's crazy stuff. But Palmer, you kind of answered my second question there, but I'll kind of throw this back to you. You mentioned the viewpoint of where we're going with these rankings. I'll kind of bring it back to you. Is it as simple as Georgia, you win your next 3 and you're in? Like, is that it?
I do. And I think around the country, it probably will play itself out to a pretty clean decision. Obviously, there's going to be somebody that gets upset, somebody that gets left out, just as it was in a 4-team field, just as it is in a 64-team NCAA tournament field.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's getting left out. And so, somebody's going to be upset. But I do think that from a Georgia perspective, if Georgia wins out, Georgia is not going to get left out. Yeah. If Georgia, is sitting here at number 12 right now, yes, they would be out of the playoff because of the group of 5 spot that gets secured. But they are the 12th best team in the country per these rankings. If they beat the number 7 team, they are going to move up. That will put them inside that field. And if you take care of business against UMass and Georgia Tech, you are in the field. Now, what would be interesting is if Georgia somehow, some way, found its way into an SEC championship game and lost, get punished for that. And that's going to be the case for whoever ends up there. Let's say 2-loss Alabama ends up in the SEC championship game and loses to Texas and or whoever it may be. If a 2-loss team from the SEC loses in the SEC championship game and gets left out, there will be riots.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you there. And before I throw it to the other guys to kind of talk about their, reaction to this, I wanted one more question, and we can take this wherever we want to go. It's if that happens, if that scenario happens, let's say the loser of the SEC title game is deemed, not fit for the playoff. How much longer till they say, well, we're not going to play it. We're not going to play the conference title game. Like, I mean, there's so much money involved, and I get that, but I feel like there's going to have to be some type of balance where you can't penalize these conferences that said we stacked up on teams and now we've got a 3-loss runner up, but they're probably the third or fourth best team in the country, but they're not going to be able to get in because of that.
It's just so tough because, and I would be lying to you if I said I know the financials of it well enough to say, hey, this championship game produces this much for the conference versus this extra playoff team would produce that much. That's ultimately what it's going to come down to, though. And either that or these athletic directors, and it's going to have to come from, league wide. It's going to have to come from some AADs that aren't necessarily involved in it. Let's just say a Vanderbilt AD, they're going to have a say in this. The South Carolina AD, they're going to have a say in this. Arkansas, those ADs, all the athletic directors in the conferences, not just the LSUs and Georgias and Alabamas and Texases that are fighting for these playoff spots and could be affected. All the ADs are going to have to stand up and say, Greg, we're not putting up with this. We are not playing this game anymore because it is going to keep a very deserving team out of this game, out of this playoff.
That's fair. Fellas, any thoughts on this?
If they don't play the SEC championship game, how are they going to pay Georgia Tech to play the Georgia game in there?
Palmer, I don't know if you know this. You absolutely got destroyed by a Georgia Tech podcaster. I got to send you the link. This good. He's a friend of the show. He's a good dude. He's obviously a massive Tech fan, but he's like, screw that guy. Like that guy's awful. Like, well, he's coming up here with his smug face talking about stuff. Like, he probably races cars down Millage too. Like, just something random. Like, he was just going off. So, anyways, but no.
Guys, I'll see you guys. I gotta go get in my Lambo and go race. I gotta go drag race some Georgia football players.
Hey, can you confirm or deny that Kirby had Carson Beck's Lambo towed over the weekend?
I'm pretty sure that was fake. I'm pretty sure that was fake.
I know it's fake. I didn't know that actually happened. He needs to let it happen.
But I did see a picture, and it was a Florida tag, which I found pretty funny.
That's amazing. Fellas, to Will and Ralph, any final thoughts on the playoff and what you want to take before we go into Tennessee, Georgia?
There's going to be a Big Ten elimination game in a couple weeks. Ohio State and Indiana. If Ohio State wins that game, I don't see a one-loss Indiana sticking around, which is unfortunate for them. I just don't see the committee keeping them around. And if Indiana beats Ohio State, that might be the end for Ohio State too.
No, it won't. It won't be though, Will. You know that, and that's that's where a very deserving, Georgia team or SEC team in general is going to get left out, and it's going to happen because a 2-loss Ohio State gets in, and deservingly so. I think that Ohio State is one of the best 12 teams in the country, but I don't know that Notre Dame is. I don't know that Penn State. I very much don't know that Penn State is.
Say it louder for the people in the back, Palmer. Don't whisper it. It's
I
okay.
don't know that Penn State is good.
No one does. No one
And
does.
Franklin doesn't.
Dude, his fans definitely don't. They can't stand him now. I mean, the performance they did against Ohio State was poor. It was pitiful. They scored on a pick six. They had the ball on the 1 yard line. They threw 3 straight passes and then trying to run it in there, and it didn't work. I mean, it was a horrible game. They literally shot themselves in the foot for making the playoff.
That's not to say that Georgia is the most impressive team out there in the world. Right now, they are not playing that well. But at least they've shown you at some point this season that they can beat a really good team. The win at Texas, the win over Clemson, and they've got a chance this weekend.
The second half against Alabama.
The second half against Alabama.
Yeah, and I mean, my thing was what Palmer said earlier was true. These playoff rankings don't matter until the final one comes out. I mean, it's just like you said, it's just getting ratings.